We'll move on to section 2 now. So we've configured our web presence. Presumably we're a week or two in to having this presence live. We've started to collect some data and starting to see some trends that are occurring. And those trends are made visible through effectively this overview dashboard as our starting point. With all of our dashboards, this is something that we implemented almost a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And dashboards are really meant to provide a top level view and a sense of how things are trending and or progressing over time. And so as I mentioned off the top, we've tried to bring into our templated overview dashboard a combination of analytics data. So you'll see here we have a timeline that's simply showing us the sessions, the conversions, the bounces, and or the page views that our website has been receiving over time. Maybe before I jump in and look at these particular beacons, I will also point out that for any given dashboard, there's a toolbar available in the top right-hand corner. The first button within that toolbar is the same type of gear which allows us to change the attributes of this entire dashboard. And so you'll see we have the option of changing the time range for all of the beacons within our dashboard to either 7, 30, or 90 days. And let's say, for instance, I do indeed change this from 30 to 90 days. I can choose the website I want to focus on. In this case, I'm going to stick with our Global Sawmills primary site. I can choose the search engine that I want to change the entire view of this dashboard for. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to make this Google US. It will change where applicable and for the appropriate beacons, the view of the data based on Google US versus Google Canada or the other search engines that are available to me. And then I want to, again, focus this dashboard around a particular cluster, whether it be my focus English keywords, all of my English keywords. Perhaps I want to focus simply on branded keywords. And that's going to give me a different view of the data. In this case, let's go with all English keywords and see what we get. So when I click on update, you can see that that's exactly what happens. All of the beacons within this dashboard are updated based on the 90-day view, the website I chose, the search engine Google US, and the keyword cluster. And if I were to go into look at any one of these individually, I do still have the opportunity of changing. If I, for instance, wanted to change the view of one of these particular beacons, I don't want to look at the last 90 days. I still want to look at the last 30 days. I can go and change those. Now, when I make that change, and maybe I'll just give the example, I'll update this to a 30-day view again. I do have the opportunity to save the state of this dashboard if I choose. And so my next couple of options up here in my toolbar are to change the view of this the configuration of this dashboard. So if from this point forward I want to see a 90-day view on everything except for this particular beacon, I can save that state, and the attributes of all of those beacons will be saved accordingly. Moving to the right on this toolbar, we also have the opportunity of editing this dashboard. Now, I should be clear, the first thing that we had to do to this dashboard, because it was a template to make editing possible, is cloning it. This clone function effectively allows us to clone a templated or a version of a dashboard. When we create a template at our system level, we control the layout and the look of the entire template. And if at some point we should update the template, that would be seen globally across the platform. If you wish to disconnect from that template or edit and change the layout of your dashboard, you can do that by cloning it. We've done that already. This is actually a copy of the original template. And what that then makes available is this editing feature, which allows me, as you can see, to move these beacons around if I choose. I can go in and I can, again, edit these more permanently, change the configuration and the attributes of any of them, or I can delete them. So you're not tied to any given dashboard. But what we have done is created a number of different templates, and I'll touch on that a little bit more as we go as well. The other thing we can do in this edit function is we can add new beacons. These beacons are categorized based on their different functions. There's some that are admin specific, some at the agency or enterprise level. There's some analytics specific beacons, some that are competitive and have competitive specific data. And you'll see down the right hand side, each one comes with a screenshot, the title, the category that it falls into, and a brief description of what that beacon is meant to do. And you have an opportunity then to drill down and find an appropriate beacon. Say I wanted to look for a specific or a different view of looking at keywords, for instance. Maybe I'm looking for a competitive keyword position comparison. I would go in and I would add that beacon, and that beacon would then be added to my dashboard. Maybe I'll give you that example. If I click Add Beacon, it first asks me to configure the beacon. In this case, it's a competitive comparison, so I need to choose which competitors I want to compare to. So I can choose a few competitors. I have to choose which search engine this particular beacon will be focused around, the cluster I want to start with, the number of rows I want to display, and then I go ahead and I create that new beacon, which gets added to the bottom of my dashboard. And I have the opportunity to resize it, to move it around, or to put it really wherever I want within the context of my dashboard. So with any of our dashboards, you have that flexibility of really creating your own custom dashboard with the views of data that are appropriate for you. In some cases, you might think of creating different dashboards for different users or types of users. Perhaps some higher level users only need top level data, where others need to see more granular views. There are beacons that are built specifically for those purposes that either show a top level view or the more granular view of different types of data. And again, those are all detailed within the library. So I wanted to give you a sense of just sort of how you create and or manage the dashboards. Actually, let's take a look maybe from here at the actual creation of a dashboard. So we have our overview dashboard again, which is our template that we offer out of the box. But you also have the opportunity to go into the dashboard section and create your own dashboard. Now we're in a demo site, so there's a whole number of dashboards that have already been created here. If I wanted to add in another, I would go to Add New Dashboard. And here I have an opportunity of creating a new dashboard from scratch, where I start with a blank slate and I add in beacons. But I could also choose from a number of different templated dashboards that have been created. We've created 5 specifics that will be made available. And I have a super user view, and that's why I see quite a bit more than just the standard templates. But I'm going to have a choice of either a discovery dashboard, which is a collection of beacons around discovering keywords, content, competitors. There's a competition dashboard, which as the name suggests is about competitive analysis and insight, a keyword specific dashboard, a content specific dashboard, and an analytics specific dashboard. If I were to choose any of those, and let's say for instance I started with a keyword dashboard as my template, I can either go with the template as is and just create the dashboard based on using the template, or I can create an editable dashboard, which is more often the case with many of our clients, in that they're creating an editable dashboard based on that template. And what they now have is a copy of our keyword dashboard. What we've provided is a sense of what all of the beacons within this dashboard are and what questions they're meant to answer. And here again, because it's editable, you have the opportunity to review and decide which of these keyword beacons are appropriate or applicable for what I'm trying to accomplish in terms of my view of and ongoing monitoring of the presence or the keywords associated with this presence. So again, you can either always go in and edit this dashboard, and once you've got a sense of what these beacons are and what questions are meant to answer, at some point you might decide to delete that particular beacon. And again, if any of these aren't relevant for what you're trying to accomplish, you can delete them, you can move them around, what have you. And I guess I clicked a little too quickly and I jumped right out of there. So lots of flexibility in terms of the way that you build and configure dashboards and interact with them. Let's just jump back over to the overview dashboard again. We're going to look at some of these beacons in a little bit more detail. Before we do, there's one more thing left up in the top toolbar for this dashboard, and that's the opportunity to create a PDF, effectively a report based on this dashboard. And so what that will do is take snapshots of all of the beacons that are here and turn it effectively into a PDF. Now, the overview dashboard hasn't really been laid out or configured to be turned into a PDF. Typically, if you want to create a PDF of a dashboard, you're more likely going to create a custom sort of layout. There's capability to add in page breaks so that if this is a report that you're creating, that it lines up properly on the page. You can even add in some beacons that allow you to add notes if it's a report that you want to generate from a dashboard. And perhaps I can give you an example. Let me just jump back over to my dashboards. And we've created a web presence overview template or dashboard report. And as you can see, this one's sort of laid out and lined up that enables us to, we've added in some notes that can be incorporated. We've added in a page break so that these beacons are laid out properly on a page by page basis, and just so that it's more formatted as a report. And from here, again, you have the opportunity then to go in and create a PDF if you choose. And this just takes a moment or two to run, obviously. And of course, there was an error creating that report. So my apologies there, but you would typically run that and it would generate a PDF that you could use as a potential way of reporting on the data within a dashboard. Alternatively, as we go back to our overview dashboard, you've got the opportunity with any of the beacons that you see here to take a snapshot to generate an image based on this beacon. And that's another quick way of getting the data out of a dashboard. Perhaps if you want to drop this image, this view of the 30-day traffic pattern for this particular website into a PowerPoint presentation or a Word doc, or maybe you just want to drop it into an email to send along to a colleague or a superior. There's opportunity, or a client. There's opportunity to generate images from any of these, or snapshots of any of these beacons. So those are ways that you can interact with the dashboard. Now, I did want to spend a little bit of time just looking at this overview dashboard in a little bit more detail and drilling down to give you a sense of how that top-down approach is meant to work. And so we'll start with this visibility score gauge. We do have questions about the visibility score and how exactly it works. So I'll describe it quickly. Visibility score in gShift terms is based on providing a value or assigning a value to each of the positions you maintain for keywords that you're tracking within a cluster. So within a cluster of keywords, I've got, for instance, 5 keywords, and each one of those maintains certain number of positions. Perhaps you've got content that's ranking in the number 1 position, the number 2 position, and then maybe somewhere down within the top 50 you have other pieces of content that are ranking. Each one of those pieces of content is assigned a value, and that value is based on a click-through study that we've used. over time. Now that is something that's adjustable. We have a default system template that we've assigned for that click-through rate. And we then provide value or assign that value to each of those keyword positions. And then we aggregate for the cluster. So we have a total value for each of your keywords and their positions. And then we divide that by the total possible score that could be maintained if you maintained every position in the top 50, which, as we all know, these days is virtually impossible. Google simply doesn't allow domains to maintain more than one or maybe 2-3 positions within even the top 50. So what you end up with is a relative score, a relative sense of your visibility as compared to every other position or every other domain within the top 50, and again across multiple keywords. So ultimately, we really want to use the visibility score to gauge our progress over time. This gauge is meant to give you a sense of what constitutes a good or a great visibility score. Well, it's something that sits in the 20 to 70 range. Quite honestly, we typically don't see visibility scores above 50 unless you're following branded keywords, because with branded keywords there is actually the opportunity to maintain multiple positions within the top 50, because by all intents and purposes you should rank and should have multiple pieces of content ranking for your branded terms. But typically anything that kind of sits in between 20 and 50 range is considered a good score. And ultimately, in this view, what we're looking for, and this is a comparative view, is how am I doing today versus 30 days ago? And are things progressing in the right direction? Now, if they are or if they aren't, we can also drill down to better understand what constitutes the visibility score and the way that it's progressing. So if I click on this particular beacon, I'm taken down into the underlying data that effectively represents this visibility score. So in this case, we're looking at Google US, and we're looking at the all English keyword cluster. We're looking at the top positions right now. I could actually change that to all positions, because that would truly represent the visibility score. And what this is showing me is, and if you recall, the visibility score we saw was somewhere in the 20 range. This particular client and presence is doing very well for several keywords, #1 position for many. But as we scroll down, you'll see that in actual fact, because we used all positions, and I probably chose a very large cluster to focus this particular demonstration on, there's actually 6 pages worth of positions. And if we were to go down to page 6, you'll see that there actually are some keywords that aren't performing very well, or have performed, or pieces of content have performed at one point or another, but have dropped out of the top 50. That's what effectively is changing or pulling that visibility score down. So one of the recommendations we typically make around visibility score is make sure that you're following the right cluster and focusing in on the right cluster of keywords. Let me just go back for a second, demonstrate this a little bit further, because again, I chose a very large cluster. We're sitting again at 28.12. If I were to change that cluster of keywords to my focus English keywords group, which is a much smaller group, my score actually rises, because now I'm focusing in on more targeted focused keywords that I really want to make sure I'm being found for. And if I drill down, we have a much more manageable set of keywords. And again, we can see that the reason that we're not, and if I change this to the top, from the top to the all view, the reason that we're not, or that we're maintaining that score of 35, is because we do still have very good visibility, page 1, position 1 visibility, 2 or 3 for several of our keywords, but we do all still have some that are on pages 3 or 4, and obviously we're not maintaining all positions. While I'm here, the whole idea of drilling down is not only to kind of quickly see and understand what constitutes a visibility score, but also what can I do about it, or what can I start to understand about how I can improve my overall visibility. And that's where I can start to take a look at some of the keywords, which provides me with a sense of the keyword, the current position I maintain, the most recent position, which is the last time that we collected data successfully, the previous position, which looks at the position 30 days prior, or in this case 90 days prior. We're looking at a 90-day view. We then also have the highest position during that time period, the search volume, which helps us to qualify the value of each of these keywords, the number of search results returned, which gives us a sense of the demand or competition for those keywords, and then most importantly, the ranking page. So which piece of content is ranking for each of these given keywords. And from here, we can do a couple of things. We can either drill down into the details of that keyword, or we can drill down into the details of a given piece of content. So let's say, for instance, that we decided that we want to understand how to get this particular page, because it has a fairly high search volume, ranking better for this particular keyword. We can drill down into that piece of content. And now we're at and this starts to provide you with a sense of why we follow content. This provides me with a more detailed view of this piece of content. I can see an analytics summary. I can see a social signal breakdown, and this shows me how many likes and or shares this particular piece of content has had. I can see a backlink breakdown and a quick technical breakdown over on the right-hand side to understand what backlinks are coming into this particular page. I can also see a breakdown of the top keyword positions by engine. So a whole number of engines we're following and the different keywords that this particular piece of content is being found for. I from there can go and take a look at specifically the ranking keywords. And again, this particular piece of content ranks for a number of keywords. I can use this along with the search volume to decide, and from here we've provided some call to action buttons to decide what to do next. I can, as a first option, go in and see if there's other keywords related to any of these that I might want to start paying attention to. This is very similar to the discovered keywords beacon, which aggregates all of those keywords together. So this is a sort of a more manual way of looking at an individual keyword and its related searches. So if I hit the discover button, you'll see there's a whole number of other keywords I could potentially be following. And I use the search volume down the right-hand side to decide, along with my own intuition, which of these would be most appropriate to follow. So I could check off the ones that I thought were appropriate and start to follow them, which would in turn go out and get me some keyword position data. Alternatively, I can again go in and look at the top 50 if I want to get a sense as to where I am relative to other search results. I see that my current position is number 2, but I can go in and I can view the top 50. I see that I've actually got, in this case, 3 different pages that are ranking for this particular keyword, which is great. We talked earlier about how we can look to follow off-site content or identify competitors. One of the other things I'll mention that we look for within the top 50 is backlinking opportunities. By definition, these top 50 search results are among the most relevant potential backlinking sources that are available to us. So I typically look for non-competitive sites, whether they be directories or blog posts or other things that I can potentially obtain backlinks from. The last option I have in looking at the top 50, or from the initial drill down that I did into this particular page, is I've got an optimize button. If I want to look for opportunity or find out how I might optimize this particular page for a given keyword, I can click on optimize. And from here, I have the opportunity to analyze this particular page for my chosen keyword. And what this will come back with is a list of best practice recommendations, primarily technical SEO items that I can take a look at implementing to optimize this specific page for this specific keyword. While I'm here, I'll also mention and refer to activities that we talked about earlier. I can at any point choose any of these recommendations and add them, or actually assign them as activities to users within my presence or within my client or agency. So whoever has user access to this particular presence, I can assign and provide a due date around when I want these activities to be completed. Once I'm done with that process, I can say I'm done with the workflow, and it will take me back to where I started on my Manage Onsite after I did my drill down. And that's sort of a workflow and really part of what we've tried to build in around the whole dashboard concept is that we're starting with the dashboard and the beacons within the dashboard as the place to gain some initial insight, get a sense of how things are progressing, and then drill down into the underlying data. To give you another example, we've got competitive share of voice, and I see that what this beacon is meant to provide is a sense of the estimated traffic. Again, we're focusing on a group of keywords. How much estimated traffic am I driving for those keywords versus my competitors? And then a general sense of my share of voice, or a percentage. And again, we're looking at that percentage as a percentage of total visibility for a group of keywords against everything else within the top 50. And so you'll see that in this case, they're actually doing pretty well at about 35.6 versus the competitors. So again, we're looking for relative comparison here. We're also watching to see if any of our competitors start creeping up and stealing of any of our share, or are making moves that would seem to indicate that they're working through and trying to optimize their presence. Maybe we can understand some of the things that they're trying to do, whether it be looking at their backlinks, or more specifically, we can drill down on any of these competitors and in the same way the visibility score took us to the underlying data that spoke to that visibility score, this competitive share of voice brings us to our competitive keyword section, or competition and keyword section, where we can look at how we're doing relative to up to 3 different competitors. And the view we have here shows us that again, we're looking at Google US for the all keywords cluster. We can change that to whichever cluster might be appropriate. We see the keywords within that cluster, their search volume, our position, and then the positions of our competitors. The red is meant to indicate where we're behind, the green is where we're ahead, and the yellow indicates which competitors we're trailing, if we happen to be trailing any competitors. That way we can get a quick sense of which of the keywords over on the left-hand side should we maybe be paying attention to if we're starting to lose some ground to some of our competition. And from there, we can drill down further into any of those keywords and again take the same approach as we did a moment ago with our content to understand, are those the right keywords, or other keywords we should be paying attention to? What content we should be trying to optimize, and then how do we go about doing that from a technical SEO perspective? So that's a sense of the dashboarding. The other pieces that I'd like to cover off quickly before we jump onto reports, and I'm noticing from the clock that we've got limited time. So within the context of the platform, under content, if we want to take a quick look at site audit, you can access this site audit either from the content or from within the content section, within the competition section, and or from our initial view when we first came into the web presence. There's a button that allows us to get to this site audit quickly. The site audit effectively allows us to run a technical audit against our site or any site for that matter. And if I create a new site audit, I can choose from either my sites or choose a custom URL. In this case, I can run my audit against virtually any site. The resources that we crawl, you'll see, are broken down into pages, images, JavaScript, style sheets, or PDFs, and you can choose. By default, we will crawl all. If you don't feel that you need to crawl any or all of those, you can select or deselect as need be. The default crawl for any site audit is 1,000 resources, so 1,000 pages, or a combination of 1,000 pages, images, JavaScript, what have you. You can change that to a small crawl of only 400 resources. So depending on the size of the site, you may decide to limit the size of your crawl, and you do have or will have an indication of how many audits are available and or how many resources are available. That's part of what you'll be contractually entitled to. There are also some advanced options that can be set and some custom filters that can be set. If you, for instance, wanted to crawl only a specific section of a website, if you have a larger site, you don't want to crawl the entire section, you can choose to crawl only a specific set of URLs. If you're at all familiar with regular expressions, you can get very granular in terms of what specifically you're crawling. You can also change the user agent. So which form of agent do you want to have identified when crawling the site, and change the performance of the crawl. Now, we've defaulted all of these, so for the most part, these advanced options, unless you're looking to do something indeed advanced, likely aren't required in most cases. So once you go ahead and run that site audit, we'll go back to the site audit level, what you're provided with, if we view a specific audit here, is a prioritized breakdown of and first off, top level recommendations around critical, medium, and or low priority items, and then more detailed breakdown of the resources crawled and what, if any, issues were identified. And you can see examples here of things, whether titles are too long, missing, or duplicated. Likewise for headings, meta descriptions. We look at internal and external links and whether or not those are followed or redirected appropriately. We look at the URL breakdown. We look at images, whether or not they have missing alt tags. And again, this is all dependent on whether or not you're indeed crawling those resources. And we can drill down further. So for instance, if we see that we have H1 headings that are missing, we can see which URLs specifically have those missing headings. We can check those off, and we can, similarly to what we saw with the SEO recommendations or the content optimizer recommendations, we can add those as activities.